End of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Hey, today I want to talk about Xerox's first quarter financials. They just published them this morning, folks. You got to find this stuff. Go look at it. Interesting stuff. It was amazing that the stock market reacted the way they did, and not in a good way. You know, Xerox had a 0.2% negative operating profit. They didn't hit their revenue numbers. The market went crazy. But, folks, the reality of it is, and the reason that I've still remained excited about Xerox is it's not about the print business, okay? It's about what are they doing to position themselves for the future, a future where print is so much less relevant to end users. Okay, you have to be a moron not to believe that print is going to be not as relevant to end users as we go through the future, right? Everybody knows that. And I look at what happens when Xerox publishes their financials and they have a little bit of a punch versus what happens when HP publishes their financial and when their print business has been flat for like 4 years, when most of their operating profit for the whole company comes from their print sector, which is in decline, the market reacts different. When in all reality, the compute business over there at HP doesn't produce the profit. And when they start getting squeezed by the other manufacturers of notebooks, as an example, you know, where's that business going to be without any kind of services, without any kind of plan for those end users in a world without print? And I think this is what shareholders need to pay attention to between both of these companies. You know, both of these companies have end users. Xerox is closer to their end users than HP because Xerox services and support equipment they sell to those end users. The trick is, can Xerox deliver other services and products to those end users? And that's what they're building a platform to do. And they've been working on this all through COVID. What's HP doing for the future? They're trying to figure out how to sell more ink on a subscription. I don't care if they sell 1 billion subscriptions. When the people buy the subscriptions and they put the ink in the printer, they're going to use it a lot less and less every single day, and it's going to continue to be used less. So they're not going to have anything. And they don't have any services model, and they don't have any services model to go direct to the end user with any type of services. So they're going to continue just to sell commodity products. We'll see where that goes for them. But when they start losing the print revenue and they start losing that print profit, what do they got really? So let's go through this a little bit, and I pull them up. And folks, you can find the Xerox financials. They're out there. They just published them. But I went through, I just want to show you a couple of pages. Here's their top line number is $1.67 billion for the quarter. Last year, same quarter, they had, you know, $1.71 billion. So they're down. They're not down a lot, but they're down enough. You know, nobody wants to be down, right? If you look at their operating profit, they're 0.2% negative. Like I said, we want them above the line. The good news is last year they were above the line for every quarter. So we need to get that number back in there. They did talk about ramping up their strategies around, you know, cutting more cost. And folks, this is the reality. All the players in the print space have to go on they've got to cut cost. The cost to deliver the equipment to the end user, supply and support it, based on 1990 models and 2000 models aren't going to work. And when I look at what Xerox is doing from the infrastructure perspective, I think they're positioning themselves to deliver at a lot less cost. Not only that, but also add other services into those accounts. They have the customers. What else can they add to those customers to generate revenues and profits? Let's pull up this next slide. But, you know, when you look at the business update, and when I compare what I read from Xerox to maybe what I read from HP, there's some big differences. And I want to get the Sharp Interactive board working here because I want to talk about some of these differences. Because, folks, these are fundamental big differences. I mean, they're big differences. I want to start over here with the Park Innovation. So we all know that they have Park over there, right? It's $250 million they put in that investment, and they're trying to invest in companies to deliver products and services to the future, and they're trying to bring the future here quicker today, right? They don't want it to be too far in the future. They want it to be now. And look at some of the things they're doing, man. They got this EloQ. I did a video on this not too long ago, and that's that software that measures activity and movement on bridges. It's like a sensor that measures this and allows municipalities and states and governments to understand the shape of their bridges. We just passed, what, a big old giant transportation bill here in the United States. I assure you, that product is coming here. And Xerox is heavily invested in that. They're doing it all over Australia. And so let's think about it. These are the things that bring a different perspective to that Xerox customer. How many state contracts does Xerox have and relationships with state buyers and state organizations? So municipalities. So you think about some of these other technologies that they're bringing to the forefront, and then you think about some of the customer bases that Xerox has. There's some synergies there. Folks, they invested in this company called Noviti. I don't know if you've all read about this. This is fantastic software. This is a predictive maintenance software that allows you to predict maintenance. And I'm not talking about DCA tools on print machines. We got a lot of people in the print channel that think they're going to do preventative predictive maintenance on printers with all these fancy tools. In all reality, the use case for that's next to nothing. But when you look at the data on huge manufacturing machines and manufacturing facilities that are running these $100 million machines, and they're having issues with that, and they can prevent those things from having to shut down, it'll save those manufacturing facilities hundreds of thousands of dollars. There is a need. There is an application, and that software is pretty fantastic. And folks, I got to tell you, I look at that Noviti software and I'm thinking about what if they took that and did something with Care AR? And we all know that I'm a big Care AR fan, and Care AR is that augmented reality platform they have. Again, it's about services. And again, it's not just about print services. As a matter of fact, most of the business Care AR has is outside of the print services. But think of how many customers that Xerox has that could use augmented reality service platforms. Not for their printers, but for their own core businesses. How many heating and air conditioner companies does Xerox sell print equipment to and services to? That now they could go in there and say, hey, have you ever thought about augmented reality for your tech team, for your tech stack? That's what Care AR is about. That's the excitement in Care AR. It's delivering products to existing print customers that give you additional revenues and profit. And when you think about Noviti, when you think about Eloque, when you think about Care AR, I want you to think about this. These are all subscription-based software platforms, which is where the future is, right? Software subscription platforms to help people do what? Improve their business outcomes. It's not about selling supplies. It's not about putting toner on a subscription. These are real software solutions to help people improve their bottom line and give a better experience to their end users. That's really the future of technology, right? And that's the future of technology service providers. Technology products where you're going to sell a thing and then supply that thing. Well, if that thing is print, you better have something else coming or you're going to be in a world of crap. Because the numbers that Xerox is showing here today when regarding to print, the numbers that HP shows, because they've been flat for like 4 years, right? So that's not growing. And the only growth we're going to get from print over the next half decade is going to be displacement growth. When one person takes away another person's customer, but here's the reality. As soon as that machine goes in that customer's office, it's going to do less activity. It's going to print less, it's going to buy less supplies, and it's going to need less service. So there has to be alternative solutions to these print customers. There has to be alternative solutions to these print customers. That's why I'm bullish on Xerox. Because they have a global platform full of customers that need other things. And as long as Xerox can focus and deliver on changing the world of service, and this is where they're headed. They're trying to change the world of service. I think they got something here, folks. I think they got something here. But, Fiddle, they're Xerox Financial Services. They gave it a new name. It's on its own. It's Fiddle. This is a financial services company that's going to go past print. And, folks, they got $3.3 billion in assets. Fiddle, if you took the assets of print leases of the other leasing companies in our marketplace in the United States and compared it to what Xerox has in assets with Fiddle, I think you'll find that Fiddle is pretty powerful. It might be the biggest in the space. It'd be a great exercise for those other organizations, our friends over at DLL. What is your print assets just for your print? What's our friends at Great America? What are the assets in your leasing company just for the print business? It's nowhere near $3.3 billion. So ladies and gentlemen, they're doing some things to prepare themselves for a world with less print and supplies. And to me, that's what the investment community really should be paying attention to. Okay? Because at the end of the day, you know, the OEMs that I've been critical of are the ones that can't deliver alternative products outside of print. The ones that don't share their numbers and their details outside of print. Xerox does a pretty good job breaking out all the numbers. They talk about Care AR, they talk about their Park Innovation, all their investments in there. They're pretty transparent in where all the revenue's coming from and then the growth and the aspirations of that growth. I do want them to break out their IT services businesses that they've been buying in the United States. They bought one up in Canada too. So in the Americas, I think they probably did it in Europe as well. But when they're buying up these IT services companies and they want to deliver that IT services deliverable inside those copier printer customers, let's start talking about those numbers as well. I've been extremely critical of our friends over at Konica Minolta for never sharing those numbers. So I'm going to give that same criticism to Xerox at this point. You got to share those numbers so we can see how that's growing. Because folks, those are good things to brag about. Those are good things to brag about. That lets the investment community realize, hey, we're trying to grab additional dollars from our print customer. We're trying to grab additional dollars from our print customers. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, let me just erase this real quick here. And I want to go to this next slide. Hang on a second. I'm faster than my board. But I want to talk for a second here about our friends over at HP, because I want to do a little bit of a comparison here just to kind of get your heads around why I'm bearish on HP but bullish on Xerox. If you look at Xerox, this was their, or HP, this was their first quarter for 2022. So they're on different month cycles, right? But they published this, and ladies and gentlemen, 50% of their total revenue for the entire HP corporation comes from notebooks. 50% of their revenue comes from notebooks. And their notebooks were down in units. And I talked about that when I recapped their financials. But their printing business, and their supplies is 64% of the whole printing business they have. 64% of their entire printing business is in supplies. Keep in mind, they don't have service contracts out there. They're trying to sell these subscriptions. But at the end of the day, I don't care how many people buy a subscription in their house, they're going to print less and less, and eventually they're going to be canceled the subscriptions, and HP never clarifies any of the realities around these subscriptions. Active, inactive, we've talked about this before. What are the volumes coming out of these things? But folks, when you look at this print business, which by the way, if it wasn't for this printing business that HP had, it'd be a totally different company. It'd be selling a bunch of compute products with very little, their operating profit would be struggled at best without the printing piece, okay? And look at this. Supply revenue was down 2% at 64% of their business in that sector. And it's down. That sector's been flat for a long time. And so you have to ask yourself a question. What happens when the print goes away? What happens when the print goes away? And, you know, when you think about what HP says when they talk about their financials. These are their aspirations. Innovation. HP continues to drive adoption of instant ink with an expanded lineup, including NB Aspire. All right, they're talking about instant ink and more printers that they're going to put out in the marketplace. That's their innovation. That's just what the market needs. More innovation around print equipment that people are using less and less every day. So what would you rather be thinking about? How we're going to innovate print equipment that nobody wants to use? Or how we're going to be managing and monitoring infrastructures with regards to bridges? How we're going to be changing the services world with augmented reality? How we're going to be able to do predictive maintenance on manufacturing plant equipment? Come on, folks. To me, that's innovation. Those are subscriptions that I think we could get excited about. Subscriptions for software that changes the world? Are we really changing the world by coming out with a new machine? And the only reason we're coming out with a new print machine in HP's case is to keep out the non-OEM toner. I'm surprised they don't say their innovation is coming up with a new firmware that locks down printers and only makes people use the OEM toner. Ladies and gentlemen, the world's printing less, and it's going to print less every single day from this point forward. We all know that. We need to start looking at these companies and what they're positioning to do with the customers they have right now with print, with other products. More importantly, services. Without the services piece, you're just schlepping products. If you're just going to schlep products that are going to be commodities, how are you going to monetize that going forward? There's not a lot of profit in notebooks. It represents 50% of HP's revenue. What happens when Dell really decides to get aggressive? What happens when Lenovo really decides to get aggressive? Folks, the bottom line is this. In order to prepare for the future, if you're in the print business, you better have something to put in the accounts of the customers you have. And that something better generate you some revenue and some profits. And in order to do that successfully, that something really should be based around services. That's why I'll continue to remain extremely bullish on our friends over at Xerox. Just some things to think about, my friends, because we all know this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.